Primetime Fantasy Football is brought to you by Next Level Radio. Head to nextlevelradioonline.com for past episodes of Primetime Fantasy Football and the Showcast, plus Celebrity Guest Spotlight. Now on to this week's Primetime Fantasy Football.
People I never thought about associating with. I don't know what it is. Talk to me. Check it out. They in front of it cause we're the mansion on my land. Full jacuzzis and my neighbors can't stand the way I live. This oh so fast. Ain't got two ladies and prime time is all that.
Whoa, Dion. It's not that kind of prime time.
Yeah, man, it's Primetime Fantasy Football on Next Level Radio.
Well, alright. Yeah.
Welcome to some bonus coverage for Primetime Fantasy Football presented by Next Level Radio. Joe will not be joining us for bonus coverage, but it'll be myself, Adam Gorey, and Steve joining me via Oogle Chat. We'll just call it Oogle.
Google Chat.
So for bonus coverage, Steve and I are going to bring you waiver wire info, whether we our top three. We're going to give you our top three guys that we think you should pick up on the waiver wire. And then we're going to go through a bunch of other guys that we think we'll tell you if you should use a waiver wire on them, if you should just wait to see if they clear waivers, pick them up off of free agency, or if you just pass in general. So let's get right into it because we're going to kind of keep this short and sweet. First up, let's go for the intro.
Fantasy Football.
All right, so first up, Steve, we'll start with you. Give us your top three guys that you'd spend a waiver claim on, and we can actually let's go back and forth. We'll each give our three, our two, and our one. So we'll start with you. Who's your third guy on your list here?
Cool, yeah. So coming in at number 3 for me is the Tennessee wide receiver. Well, one of them played well. They both actually played pretty well last week. But I have Justin Hunter on my list, who ended up with 3 catches on 5 targets for 99 yards and a touchdown. And the reason that I have Justin Hunter over Kendall Wright, I would actually even have if they were both available, I would pick Justin Hunter over Kendall Wright because I just think Justin Hunter has more athleticism and more skill. I understand that Locker got hurt last week, but I just like the way that Justin Hunter plays. He's got so much talent that he can really unleash it out any week. Somebody drop him and go ahead and get him, I think.
And we each kind of talked about this, you and I both in the preseason. We both liked Hunter better than Joe did from a draft position. And now you're seeing he's only 46% owned in Yahoo leagues at least. It could be different, if you're on ESPN or whatever. But Kendall Wright's about like 71%. So that's kind of a guy I agree with you. Though he's not on my top 3, he'd probably make my honorable mention at 4. By the way, stat came out. He led the Titans wideouts on number of snaps Sunday, 68 of 70. Kendall Wright played 57. Nate Washington played 48. So he has officially surpassed Nate Washington as the at least number 2 guy, and maybe possibly emerge as a co-number 1 with Kendall Wright. So yeah, I mean, I do think though he should be owned in all leagues. I know in the league you and I are both in, he's been dropped. So yeah, I don't disagree with you at all there. But just edging out Justin Hunter for my number 3 is Ronnie Hillman, the back for Denver. As we saw Monte Ball went down. He has a groin injury. I think initial thoughts are that he's going to miss about 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, they're going week to week.
Yeah,
I heard the phrase a while. So
yeah. So I mean, that could mean a couple weeks. That could mean like 6 weeks. So you're not really sure. The reason he's not number 1, normally he'd be number 1, but number 1, Denver has not been running the ball well in general this season. And I could see him losing a few carries to C.J. Anderson, maybe Jawan Thompson. Like, I don't think he's necessarily going to be the getting every single carry like Monte Ball mostly did. I think they work in C.J. Anderson or Juwan Thompson. Now, the good thing about this is C.J. Anderson was a healthy scratch during the game. So Ronnie Hillman's the clear-cut, guy to take over. But the thing that worries me is last year he had fumble issues, so, he's probably one fumble away from possibly having, losing more carries to other guys. Where do you land on Hillman here, Steve?
Yeah, the reason that I didn't have Hillman in my top 3 was Juwan Thompson. For some reason, I just think that he is a better running back, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if all around, but I think he has more talent and more ability. And I think that he has the ability to score in the red zone and things like that. So the reason that I didn't have Hillman on my list was because if I didn't get Hillman on my waiver, then I would actually be okay with picking up and either stashing or if I'm desperate, I guess, playing Juwan Thompson behind Hillman, because I see it as being like a committee type of thing, and whoever looks the best on that day will get the touches. So I'm kind of into Juwan Thompson. I wouldn't get him on the waiver wire, but I would be okay with adding him as a free agent if I didn't get Hillman on my waiver wire.
Yeah, and that's a good point. The reason for me, I guess, that Hillman cracked the top 3 is, if you're a Monte Ball owner, for me, he goes to number 1.
Sure.
I think if you have Monte Ball, even ahead of these next 2 guys we're going to be talking about, because we both have 2 and 1 is the same, I would have Hillman, and I do have Monte Ball in the league, and I have Hillman as my first waiver priority, and then one of these other guys we'll talk about as my second. So let's move on to number 2. Steve, you and I both have the same number 2. Why don't you talk a little bit about Andre Williams for the Giants?
Yeah, the big back from New York. The Giants are starting to look okay on offense, which is a real surprise, at least to me. But and the big reason that Andre Williams is thrown in here is Rashad Jennings obviously got hurt on Sunday, and I believe they're calling it week to week again. Which is not good news for Rashad Jennings owners. And certainly Andre Williams is somebody who is capable, especially in this system where there are a lot of short passes and a lot of runs. So I think Andre Williams has a chance to not only get the load of carries, but has the ability to handle the load of carries. So I think he's a really solid option if you either have Rashad Jennings or you're looking for a running back. I think you can do both there and pick him up on waivers.
Yeah, he's number 2 on my list as well, mainly for the same reasons. He's a guy who was doing actually pretty well even when Rashad Jennings was healthy, and he's only owned, as much as we've talked about him, on the podcast, he's only owned in 26% of Yahoo leagues.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's going to go way up with the waivers, but yeah, definitely, a guy to. He runs the ball well, and, now that Rashad Jennings is hurt, he's going to get all the carries. You have no issues there. So, and even when Jennings comes back, there's a decent chance you see some split there, and Jennings, has a possibility of, he has a sprained MCL, I think it was, so I don't know that those injuries you get 100% too quickly. You know what I mean? I don't know if they try and rest him up for a few weeks to get him 100%, or if they try and let him play through it, at 80%, 90% or whatever. But yeah.
I think one of the points could be that if Andre Williams is capable, then they won't rush him back. So
yeah, exactly. That's a good point. And then we both have the same number 1, Brandon Oliver, San Diego. Far and away a better runner than Donald Brown. Now, it helped that Donald Brown got hurt, concussed. Yeah. But even if Donald Brown plays this week, and I don't know that he's going to, I don't see them giving him the ball back. I think they go Brandon Oliver regardless, and I think they stick with Oliver until Matthews comes back. And even when Matthews comes back, I think he has the chance to start splitting some carries with Matthews. And Matthews, with his injury history, obviously, always a possibility to get hurt.
Yeah, this guy is certainly the new and improved flex option if you have Ryan Matthews. Even when Ryan Matthews comes back, like you said. And Woodhead's out for the year, so with this guy can obviously catch the ball too. I think it says here he had 4 catches for 68 yards and a touchdown, so he can even fill that Woodhead role as well. This guy, he has a lot of talent, and not somebody that was really low on the radar before he was owned in 14% of Yahoo leagues. We're going by Yahoo on our numbers tonight, but he has the ability to be a running back and a pass catching back. So he's got a lot of talent, and he's somebody that certainly, even if you won't have Ryan Matthews or Donald Brown, if you're looking for a running back, this guy could be awesome for you moving forward for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and that's why he's number one on our list. I agree. All right, so let's get on to the guys that were not on our list, and we'll talk about, do you think you should pass on them, put in a waiver claim, maybe how high of a waiver claim. Now, Steve, I guess we can real quick do this for these three guys. What waiver claim would it take for you to pull the trigger on adding one of these guys? If you're waiver claim 1, are you going to add these guys? Or are you going to, you know what I mean? Like, how high are you willing to drop back for these guys?
Yeah, I think if I would take Oliver top 3 for sure.
Yeah.
I think he's got a real potential for the rest of the year. Even with Ryan Matthews with the potential of coming back. I like Brandon Oliver a lot in the way he looked. And that Chargers offense, and they click, man. They're really good this year, so he could be a key factor for your team as an every week starter. So I'd probably take him no matter what.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I think I would even extend that to Andre Williams because, number one, he's got a great matchup next week against the Eagles.
Yep.
Not great against the run. And number 2, like we had been talking about before, the guy's slowly working his way into more carries for New York. So if it wasn't, for Ronnie Hillman, I would probably say if you're not a Monte Ball owner, the back half of your league. If you are a Monte Ball owner, then I have no problem taking him in the front half as well.
Yeah, I think Monty Ball, I think I would be, or Ronnie Hillman, if I had Monty Ball, I would probably be 3 or 4, just because I think Oliver and Andre Williams are better options for you. If you can get them. So I think if I was 3 or 4, then I would take Hillman if I had Monty Ball, and if I didn't, like you said, it would have to be the bottom half, and I'm not necessarily expecting him to do too much. I think maybe as a bye week type of play, because you don't know what to expect. Like you said, the Broncos aren't running it all that well, so I wouldn't get too overly excited.
What about Justin Hunter?
Yeah, Justin Hunter, I have him on my list, so I think I kind of put him in the same category as Hillman, though. If I'm looking for a wide receiver, then I think, but it's kind of a bye week wide receiver or a matchup play wide receiver, which there's plenty of those in the league this year. So if you have guys that are on a bad matchup and Justin Hunter's on a good matchup, he's certainly worth it. So I think that warrants probably a bottom half waiver claim. You can drop to the bottom and add Justin Hunter and definitely improve your team.
Yeah, and I think it kind of depends on how starved you are at wide receiver. You know what I mean? If you got a couple guys who are straight, if you have Keenan Allen as one of your starters, I have no problem with you spending a top half waiver claim on Justin Hunter because you've seen better production already from him. So, and by the way, the Broncos have kind of a relatively difficult next couple weeks for running backs. They play the Jets and then they play the Niners, so that could also potentially affect how high you're willing to go on Ronnie Hillman. But I do agree that if Oliver and Williams are out there, they're better options. If you have Monty Ball, then it's kind of hard to say. But all right, so let's get to the guys we haven't talked about. Go ahead.
The other thing with Hunter, I know Week 4 was a big week for buys, and people got victimized, and now we're headed into Week 6, and Week 9 is a huge bye week for teams, and it's a lot of quality offenses have buys in Week 9. I know the Packers are off Week 9, the Bears are off Week 9, the Lions are off Week 9, so it's never too early to think down ahead.
Almost the entire NFC North is out Week 9.
Yeah, exactly.
All but one team. Yeah, there's another six teams, and I think there's another 6 in Week 10 as well. The Colts.
Thinking out ahead doesn't hurt you if you can get somebody now and thinking out like we're talking about with Justin Hunter or Ronnie Hillman type of that.
Yeah, exactly. And Ronnie Hillman, if Monte Ball isn't back by then, but like I said, if you're a Monte Ball owner, having Hunter or having Hillman can't hurt because they've already had their bye, so you have no worries there.
Right.
So let's talk about a couple Rams guys here. First off, Austin Davis threw for 375 yards, 3 touchdowns, also added 3 rushes for 30 yards. This is his second good game in a row. They were coming off the bye, but before the bye, he had like mid or low 20s point-wise for fantasy. Are you wavering, waiting to see if he drops the free agency, or just passing completely on him?
I'll wait to see if he drops the free agency for me. Not necessarily. I don't need to waiver him as a quarterback. I think there's better quarterback options, but if you're in a 2-quarterback type league or something like that, I think that the free agency is your best option. I wouldn't waste a waiver claim on Austin Davis just because of the inconsistency. Yeah,
and I think maybe if you're 11 or 12, I would do a waiver claim, only because the way waiver claim works, with some guys adding, say they put their first waiver claim on Andre Williams, and their second one on Austin Davis. Well, if you're at the back end, number one, you're not going to drop back any further, but you get the jump on those guys in case they have multiple waiver claims in.
Sure, yeah.
So yeah, if I'm like towards the back of my league in waiver claims, and depending who my quarterback is, obviously. If I have Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, I'm okay. But if I have a guy that's struggling, like even Cam Newton, Nick Foles, and we'll probably talk about Nick Foles on Wednesday when we do that podcast. By the way, I don't think we mentioned this.
Drafted Brady, you might be scrambling.
Yeah, by the way, I don't think we mentioned this, but we're recording this Monday night before the Monday Night Football game. So any waiver guys from that, we unfortunately won't get to talk to because we want to get this to you on Tuesday so you can have a chance to listen and put in those waiver claims before they go through on Wednesday. But yeah, but I mean, even guys like
waiver wire, go get them.
Yeah. Would you rather have Eli Manning or Austin Davis?
I think I'd rather have Austin Davis just because of the inconsistency of Eli Manning. He's been good recently, but I mean, it's not just a one-year thing. Trends tell you that Eli Manning is really inconsistent. And when he has a bad game, he's going to throw 3 picks, and it's not going to see a consistency.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Though the one thing that helps him out, and we'll talk about him in a second, is Odell Beckham Jr. being back. Because just having another weapon does help. So, but let's get to the other Rams guy. I don't know if I talked about Austin Davis. Benny Cunningham, 7 rushes, 47 yards and a touchdown, 3 catches for 24 yards. How you feeling about him? Waiver, free agent, or pass?
I like Benny Cunningham. If I am, where do I want to put this? 9 or later, I'm going to waiver Benny Cunningham. Zach Stacy got got dinged up last week. So I'm not even sure if he's going to play. He said he expects to play, but if he doesn't, that's even better for Benny Cunningham. But even without, they're kind of doing a running back by committee at this point because Zach Stacy hasn't impressed. So I like Benny Cunningham, and then I'm going to pick him up, and certainly if he drops to free agency, I'm going to go get him.
Yeah, I agree. Zach Stacy, I mean, it's Coach Fisher said he'll likely miss some practice time this week, but he should be available for week 6. That doesn't mean he's going to be. So, definitely if I'm the Zach Stacy owner, if I'm number one, if you're the Zach Stacy owner, you probably should have had him already.
Good point.
But, if you decide to wait or if you had to clear some roster space because of those buys, then, definitely spend a waiver claim on him. If I don't have Zach Stacy, I would much rather spend my claim on one of the other 3 guys that we talked about earlier.
Oh, sure. Absolutely,
Oliver Williams.
The way I'm thinking is if you're at 9 or worse, you're not going to get Oliver or Andre Williams or Hillman because there should be other guys that get them. But
so I mean,
for you,
you can
put 4 in.
You can do what I did and put in like a couple waiver claims, dropping the same person and just ordering it so that like your number one is adding Oliver, dropping Josh Gordon or whoever the heck Number
I was going to
two
say the exact same thing, actually. I don't know if people know about that, but you can definitely just drop the same guy over and over again.
until one of them goes through,
Yeah.
All right, so then let's talk about Odell Beckham Jr. real quick. I don't think I had him on the list, but he had a pretty decent game, and apparently he's 100% right now, according to Tom Coughlin. He came out of there without any setbacks. What are you doing with him? Are you adding at all, or passing, or wavering?
I'll add him in free agency. One game is great. But and they do seem excited about him. So there's a chance that you won't get him if you wait to add him on free agency like I would do. But he's not. I mean, the one game is great, but I'd like to see a little bit more before I go and use a waiver claim on him.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, he played just over 50% of the snaps last week, so I think you do see that go up. But just remember, I believe it was a hamstring injury he had, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah, yeah. And it was nagging, and it took him a while to get back.
Yeah, so, I mean, with a hamstring injury, and we've talked about this several times, and Joe knows because he's a track coach, hamstring injuries have a tendency to pop back up again later in the year. So, not that, that's definitely going to happen to him or anything, but it's just a concern there with injuries. But yeah, I would probably wait for free agency like you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Travis Benjamin, the other Benjamin that I was calling him the other day, looking for Kelvin Benjamin to get some points. 4 catches on 4 targets, 48 yards, and 2 touchdowns. One of them a pretty big one. I think it put them ahead or tied it up or something like that.
The biggest road comeback in NFL history.
So, what are you doing with Travis Benjamin? Anything at all? I mean, with Cleveland, I mean, they kind of seem to be spreading the ball around a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to take a pass on this one, just because we mentioned Justin Hunter, who I'm obviously higher on, and then we just mentioned Odell Beckham, who I'm definitely higher on, and I don't know. I'm just going to take a pass on this. This could be a 1-week situation, a Marvin Jones type of thing, where people go crazy for him, and he doesn't do much the rest of the year. So I'd like to see some more production. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different receivers in this game. Taylor Gabriel actually led the receivers, and I would take a pass on him as well. He just didn't have 2 touchdowns.
Sure, yeah.
Gabriel had 4 catches for 95 yards on 6 targets. Benjamin only had 4 targets. I mean, Cameron had 7. Andrew Hawkins had 9. So I'm still higher on those guys than Benjamin. Maybe if he does it again and next week, I think about wavering him if he's still available, but I think I'm taking the pass as well.
Yeah, you said it. They're all over the place right now.
Yeah, so next up we have Tim Wright, the tight end for the Patriots. He had, let me see here, 5 catches for 85 yards and a touchdown yesterday on their bounce-back game against the Bengals. How you feeling about Tim Wright?
Yeah, this is an interesting one to me just because when it screams Aaron Hernandez as far as football goes with the Patriots, with Gronk and Tim Wright both having good games last night. But to me, it's a wait and see for me. But you could be really weak at tight end because there's a lot of really weak tight ends this year. I know I am, but I'm still waiting on Tim Wright.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, he only had those 5 targets. Now, that was 3rd highest on the team. Edelman had more and Gronkowski had more. But this is what sticks out to me the most. He played 19 of 84 snaps.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a wait and see for me as well. I mean, the fact that he did as much as he did on 19 snaps is good. But I'd like to see him get more snaps before I decide to add him, and definitely before I decide to start playing him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's way too inconsistent at this point.
Yeah. All right. So next up, we got Mohamed Sanu. Oddly enough, and I'll have to look again at his stats real quick, but he's still available. He's only owned in 28% of leagues, and I think he's had a pretty damn good year considering. He had another pretty good game yesterday. Sunday yesterday. He ended up catching 5 catches on 9 targets for 70 yards and a touchdown. How you feeling about Sanu if he's available in your league, Steve?
He's an interesting option just because, I mean, he's the guy that throws it too, right? That's not Marvin Jones. He actually had a touchdown pass.
He did have a touchdown pass, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting option. They really like his talent, and they seem to throw him around. I don't know. I guess for me, this would depend on matchups. He seems like a matchup guy to me. If he's got a good matchup, then I feel fine throwing him in. But I guess what that comes down to as far as the waiver wire concerns is I'm not going to use the waiver on him. if I see he's got a good matchup and he's a free agent, then I might go pick him up if another one of my receivers has a bad matchup that week.
Yeah, I actually would use a waiver on him if I'm like in the back half. I actually like him.
Okay.
He had 6 points in week 1, so it's not a great showing. It's pretty good. 4 catches for 36 yards on 5 targets. He did have a 2-point conversion. Week 2 jumped up to 16 points. He had 50 yards passing in that game, too, and that's not even the one he threw the touchdown in, apparently.
Yeah, they run these plays a couple times.
Yeah, so he had 3 catches for 84 yards and a touchdown week 2. That was the week I believe A.J. Green had gotten hurt. Week 3, even when A.J. Green came back, 5 catches on 8 targets for 44 yards, and then that throwing touchdown. Last week they had a bye, and then this week he had another 5 on 9 targets for 70 yards. So, I mean, the targets are there, and looking at a guy like you were mentioning with the bye weeks, his bye week's done, so you don't have to worry about it. So, those weeks 9 and 10 down the road, I have no problem stashing him until then. And, even if you have a guy that got hurt, I mean, look at Calvin Johnson. If you were relatively thin at wide receiver, and, if Justin Hunter's gone or something like that, I have no problem picking up Mohamed Sanu. I think he's going to have a pretty good year. I mean, he's probably going to be a wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 3, something like that. But, I mean, I would take him over a lot of other guys, definitely over, we already talked about Travis Benjamin, other guys like that.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got the talent, and, I mean, you make a strong case for him, so for sure.
All right, well, I think that wraps it up. Any other guys that we need to talk about, Steve?
No, we have Andre Williams at the bottom of the list. We talked about him earlier, so I think that could be everybody.
All right, cool. Well, guys, make sure you listen on. We'll be recording the next podcast on Wednesday. Get your questions in. Send them to email them into primetime at Next Level Radio Online. That's primetime, one word, at nextlevelradioonline.com. You can also tweet us at NXT Level Radio, hashtag PTFF, or tweet Steve individually at SRichards31, myself at AdamNextLevel, or Joe is at JoeyWeb32. Check out Steve's blog, StephenRichards.net. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, like I had mentioned before. And keep an eye out. We'll probably do this, maybe not every week, but definitely try and give you a quick half hour about guys for your waiver wire, help you out there in case you're starving for some guys. Steve, anything else to add?
Russell Wilson's available. Go get him. He just scored 9 points on the opening drive of the game in Monday Night Football.
I guess that means you're not trading him to me.
No, that's not going to happen.
All right, guys. Well, we will see you Wednesday. We should be joined by Joe. So we'll see you in a couple days.
See ya.
You know, ever since I turned pro in 1989.